2023 Code Review Task Force meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. Can we take roll call? Sarah Albright?
Yep.
Albright, sorry. Donna Jensen? Here. Godin Nambidurapad? Did I get close? Nancy Nyeston?
Yep.
Steve Roush?
Roush.
Thank you. Me, Shelley Ward, and Joshua Walls. The clerk will note that Chair Andrew Niaswama is absent tonight. And Joshua Walls. All right. Members of the public may attend in person or participate online at zoom.us/join, meeting ID 83107113447. Once you log into the meeting, please use the chat feature to tell the moderator if you wish to speak to an item. More information is available in the agenda packet and on the city's website. Now on to the agenda. The first item of the meeting tonight is adoption of the agenda. City Clerk, does staff have any changes to the agenda? Do any task force members have changes?
No.
May I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Motion by Donna Jensen and second by Godin Niaswami. I said that wrong, sorry.
All those in favor?
Oh, all those in favor? Please say aye and raise your right hand.
All those opposed?
Thank you.
The motion carries.
The second item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the March 29th meeting. Does staff have any changes to the minutes?
None.
Do any task force members have changes? May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Sarah with the motion and Donna with the second. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay and raise your hand. Motion carries. All right, item 3 is final review and approval of Title VI police regulations, continuing the discussion from the last meeting. The title was included in the meeting packet with staff's suggested edits. And is that the information provided? That's on the next one. Is this where we do a page by page?
Yes,
Okay.
so, pages 13 through 33 is what we went over last, at the
Okay.
last meeting. So
Okay.
typically then we'll go through and look at the highlighted stuff and then move on for discussion.
Okay, thank you. I did notice that you had included in the packet the item 2 for the review of the city animal ordinance from the meeting prior. I did look that over personally, and I was the one who had the questions. Did anybody else have any questions regarding that? Okay, I just want to move on from that then. Any questions on page 13 or any discussion?
I have a question. I think I may have asked that, but I don't remember. This title, police, it says police regulations, but it's not really about police regulations. It's about nuisance or whatever. So the title kind of doesn't seem to match the content in my mind.
Counselor?
I think maybe there was an answer to that later, but I don't remember one.
Sure, Chair, members of the task force. It's called police regulations because it refers to regulations under the city's police power, which is sort of the general power to protect for the public health and safety and welfare.
That's how it's called.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we use it. Yeah, okay. But it confuses me, confused me.
Fair
Still
question.
does, but-
Any other questions on that page? No? Okay. How about page 14? There's nothing highlighted there. Page 15, there's some highlights. They clarified, based on our recommendation. Does anybody have any edits or concerns there?
Seems good.
Page 15, item F, where the highlights are. All right. I don't see any edits on page 16. On page 17, we do have a comment and quail.
That I think we did discuss at the last
Yeah.
meeting. So I think that the yellow is where you just made the changes suggested at the last meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
So I think I'm looking for the page that we were on.
Yep, so we need to start at page 32, but I thought that, because they typically go
Yeah,
through the
okay.
yellow.
If you wanna go through the
Yeah.
yellow now,
Okay.
instead of waiting for all of it next time,
Yep.
yeah.
That's-
oh, okay, I thought that's what we were supposed to do, is
Yeah.
review the yellow, no?
Yeah, yes.
We are,
Yes,
okay.
because that's what we've done in the past, yes.
Okay, so we're being consistent at least.
Yes.
Okay, on page 18 then, there were some edits based on our recommendations, confinement including, and then, significant edits to confinement of potentially dangerous and dangerous dogs that was discussed last time. Any comments, questions, concerns before we move on to page 19? Okay. Page 19, we had some continuation of the dangerous dogs, and we have 627, obligation to prevent nuisances. All right. No more highlights until page 21. Some corrections. We rewrote clarification per consensus in item E.
Good.
Page 21. Sorry. All right. Page 23, we had some edits to section 6.2.14. And we just referred to contact information and simplified that. And then we removed B, which was combined with the confinement section.
Can I ask?
Yes, Nancy?
I think part of our discussion was whether there should be differences between dangerous dogs and potentially dangerous dogs. Am I understanding that now both have kind of the same requirements for confinement and enclosure?
Yes.
All right, because it was slightly more strict for dangerous dogs last time, but now it's both can like just be in the yard if the fence is
Yes, yeah.
is adequate. Okay, that's great.
Does the homeowner define adequate, or does it need to be 5? Let's say it's a tall dog with a 3-foot fence, that ain't gonna work. That will not work, right?
Well, it's adequate to contain,
Okay.
so it's modified by that to make sure that it.
So it's
yeah.
their responsibility,
Yeah.
their legal liability.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. All right, the next edits I see are on page 26, again, where we just eliminated specific pieces of information and updated it to contact information. And page 28, any type of animal fighting is prohibited, not just chickens. And any animal species prohibited by Minnesota statutes and federal law was removed on the bottom of page 28. Next edit appears to be page 30. Conditions of keeping was removed, and it was moved to obligation to prevent nuisances per our last discussion. And then 32 is where we need to begin our review. Erica?
34.
34, sorry.
I got a, can I add a comment to 6/2/27?
Absolutely.
So, somebody contacted me that has chickens,
Mm-hmm.
and they thought in the recent city flyer that was published, that the size of the chicken coop has gone down. Can you confirm that, or has it remained the same?
To my understanding, the size of the chicken coop has not changed
Has not changed.
since it was implemented 12 years ago.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Question 2 from another neighbor. Do we allow chicken coops in the front yard
I
and
don't,
on the side of the yard, or is it just in the back of the yard? So in the neighborhood, we've had people, their yards are becoming more like gardens, or, and now the chickens are moving into publicly viewable spaces. Do we want anything in terms of requiring those to be in the backyard?
It does say here at the bottom of page 32, no poultry coop or run shall not be in the front or side yard.
Ah, so that would be not in compliance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
If I can just add a piece of information, from a zoning standpoint, we would consider an accessory structure needing to meet accessory structure setbacks. And typically that would be in the rear
It'd be hard to meet
of
them
the
on a
one's
side yard.
property.
Chickens are getting lots of interest.
they are, especially with eggs.
Popular.
Look, when that got enacted, I drove my park and I'm going around my park and I'm going, I got 5 chickens in a yard running around. Kid you not.
How are the owls doing? Good?
Not good enough because
Fox are
they
happy.
disappeared within 48 hours.
Thank you.
Any other questions about poultry coops before we move on? All right. We have no questions on the bottom of page 33, and our next topic appears to be firearms. We have a comment that we remove definitions with common meanings. And Nancy, you had a comment around whether quotes are needed on landowner.
Yeah. Grammatically, it just stuck
Is
out
there
as
a
being
reason
odd.
for that
Um,
legally?
no, I think they can be stricken.
Okay. Alrighty, and the definition of landowner was removed, so. Any other conversation on page 34? Exciting.
You run a very efficient meeting.
We're blazing through.
Everybody's tired tonight.
Maybe a question on 643, and maybe it's because it's in the city limits, but like hunters, you can have an or not loaded gun not in the case in your car. I think that's Minnesota law, but maybe this pertains to city limits.
And which point under 643?
Just permitted use of firearms, shooting shall not be encased or dismantled or permitted under the following circumstances unless prohibited. So, anyways. I read it somewhere, I was wondering if that was in conflict with state law, but
I don't think it's in conflict with state law, but
Okay, thanks.
Something to check into maybe before the next meeting.
I can do that.
Okay. Any questions or comments on page 35?
Good.
Page 36.
Just ask without going into any particular definition, I assume we have all the state laws that apply to handgun ownership and permitting and all of that still apply.
State laws? Yeah, absolutely.
And do we need to say that, or is that just implied that these are in addition to, basically?
Well, if you look at 643 permitted use, it says in that first sentence, unless prohibited by state or federal law. So it encapsulates that.
In other sections of the code, we have made explicit statements that we're incorporating state law into the code. Is that what you're asking, Nancy?
Here's my bottom line. I would not want anyone to think that it was more liberal, the things you can do with guns or own or have or shoot or whatever, than is already allowed by the state. I wouldn't want anyone to think, gee, I am not seeing a specific prohibition against whatever, so I guess I can shoot in the air with my AK-15 as much as I want.
Shoot down your neighbor's drone.
Maybe something could be added in the intent.
So I don't know if I'm overthinking this. I'm perhaps a bit more sensitive than some other people on the issue of guns, but I don't,
Chair,
all.
Chair,
I'd like
members
to
of
ban
the
them all.
task force, I think it's encapsulated by 643 and the first two sentences there. You certainly could, if you wanted to make it more explicit, but certainly it's clear to me that you can't use firearms in a manner that's prohibited by state or federal law. So that covers it for the sake of notification.
all right. Yeah,
Anybody?
it seems back.
I think I see what you're saying, Nancy. It is stated a little oddly.
But
And Chair, members of the task force, and like a lot of these things in the code, we're trying to make them more plain. So if this is a particular section that you want us to go back to the drawing board and try to work on to make it a little bit more clear, we can do that.
if it's, I get, instead of just saying, you can do everything here except, I guess,
We could maybe
rather
add
have it
something.
that, everything
I see where you're headed with that.
carries over.
And maybe it's just more of a clarifying statement in the intent
Yeah.
area,
In
and you
addition
just,
to things
Yeah.
prohibited by state law might solve that, as state and federal law.
I will rework and
All right,
make
thank you.
this make more sense.
Thank you, Nancy. All right. I believe we're on page 36 now. Did I skip 35? Oh, I read it. Didn't you keep up? No. Sorry, we're on page 35. Any comments on that? Discussion? Okay. Page 36.
did we approve this?
We do have a question from Nancy regarding regular motorcycles being included. Did we answer that adequately?
Well, I think, was the answer no, or was that in a different issue? Trail bikes and mini bikes imply something smaller and less colorful.
than a regular
So
motorcycle.
maybe motorcycles are considered motor vehicles, not recreational motor vehicles.
I think that's correct. I don't think
All
they're
right.
considered under this definition.
Just a question, how about minors operating them on city streets? So I've seen kids riding their mini bikes around Burnsville. Is that okay? Do we know? Do we want to control it?
If they're on the roads, it's governed by,
Yeah, I think that would be, if we're talking about the mini bike, if it's a recreational vehicle, it'd be governed by this section. As I sit here, I don't know what the exact prohibition is, but I think it's prohibited.
So it looked like a lot of fun, but.
It is until it isn't.
Yeah.
Get a hockey helmet on though, so you're safe.
Safer, but those things are awful short.
I know. He caught my eye. But that, we don't talk about it. There's nothing in here talking about motorized vehicle use and with youth, correct?
Is that all
I
referred
haven't
to the
seen it, but
just
maybe it's
state?
there.
Is it
that's
all just
covered by
referred to
state law,
state
isn't it?
I don't know.
statutes for, like, the
It
driving?
might be
Yeah.
something just to check.
Yeah, I can look into it.
Just, maybe it's worth a comment, I don't know.
Well, that's valid. I feel like it's probably the DMV that's probably got all
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah,
legal.
I think you can drive a snowmobile. You don't need a
On the city
adult driver's
streets?
license. Well, wherever, I mean, it's listed in here as a thing, if you're, I don't know if we have any parks where you're allowed to, but I don't think you have to be an adult to drive these things.
No, but on city streets.
Right, city
Yeah.
streets, you'd have to be a registered vehicle, certain kinds, and I think the state has a lot of stuff with that.
They've got a lot of regulations. I haven't read them recently, so.
I'm sure I have a question for Jared. I'm reading 653 here. Does this say, is this stating that like e-bikes would not be permitted on any of our paths or park properties?
Because they go faster than 10 miles an hour?
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
according, it
Well,
says,
it says
it's operational,
publicly owned land.
recreational vehicle in 653 states that you can't have it on publicly owned land, including
Yeah.
property, parks
don't-
and
I'm not-
playgrounds and that sort of thing.
Yep.
So, and an e-bike is part of that, so right now in the city of Burnsville, you're not allowed to use e-bikes in any of our
Parks.
parks or our trails, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's already in ordinance.
How, I don't see e-bikes listed anywhere.
Well, it's electric, e-bike is an electric bike.
Electric bike,
And
he's
this is,
shortening it.
this says electric
Or
motorized
electric motor,
On page
vehicles.
37?
Yeah, 36.
36.
Well, if you go to the definition of what the vehicles are, it states electric, motorized.
Sorry.
So-
Could you read the words that
Sure.
define it?
It says, not limited to trail bikes, mini bikes, go-karts, motorized scooters,
Yeah.
motorized skateboards, and all-terrain vehicles, snowmobiles, hovercraft, and other vehicles. E-bike is just shortening electric bike.
Right,
electric Motorized bike.
but I don't
Preceding
don't
that,
see that in there.
it would be just before it. So by a self-propelled vehicle powered by a combustion engine or electric motor,
That's on page
including but
36.
not
Not
limited to.
At the very bottom.
So an e-bike
Yeah.
would fall under that category.
Then you get over to,
Electric bike.
then you get over to 653, what they can't do, and they can't
Even though
ride in
it's
the parks
battery,
and those things.
we're still calling it electric.
Well, in a way it is.
You could be more specific if you want to say e-bike.
Yeah, I
Would-
mean, do we want to allow them? Because I feel like that's very
wouldn't-
popular now, so.
Power
I wouldn't want to
assisted
be
or ADV.
saying your battery-operated bike is not allowed in Burnsville.
I think it's,
So-
I think, I was thinking of like mobility scooters or an electric wheelchair would fall under that definition as
would.
well.
Yep,
And I think we need to make an exception for
for
that.
those things.
I would think that that would fall under any ADA requirement, or
Oh, good point.
allowances, right?
Yeah, but not for the e-bike.
Is it,
Yes, but
An
you,
e-bike wouldn't be considered an accessible device?
no, something like a
wheelchair or a-
wheelchair
or a
mobility
sizable
scooter.
Would be, right.
But it might be worth considering calling it out so people can know, because if they're gonna look to this.
Okay.
Well, e-bikes are very popular and they're used a lot by seniors in this city and used a lot by people with disabilities in this city.
Right.
And that's how
So-
they get around.
So is this something we should consider allowing
Well,
in parks?
I'm just making sure I understood our ordinance.
Yeah, I think that,
And now the rest is up to you guys.
Well, since the city is doing so much to make the trails for this, bikes and bike trails, and those are becoming more popular, because I see them around the city now that are electric bikes, that is something I think we have to address.
In
If I
full
can-
disclosure, we do have people that complain about e-bikes in the parks.
Understood.
So just so you know that as
If
well.
I can just add a piece of information, so a few months ago, we were approached by one of those electric scooter companies and presented information at one of our council work sessions. And at that time, council directed us to look at our ordinances to make changes and have our engineering staff bring those forward. So, maybe that's a time where they do a deep dive into the changes and make a proposal through kind of more of a policy change that route, than making the changes kind of here on the fly. That way, you're prepared with that information. That would be my suggestion.
It's, to me, there's a vast difference between an electric scooter and a bicycle that might kick in some battery assistance. And I would be loath to put really much regulation at all on, battery assisted to get up the damn hills in Burnsville on your bike.
All the hills in Burnsville.
not just.
So,
It might be a matter of just definition a little bit more, like, just to maybe
Yeah.
exclude or include, but, I mean, if it's a big thing that, and they are popular, so.
and maybe
I
it's
could
the
see
speed
how
limit
it's-
issue that, you can pedal your bike. Some people can do 25 miles an hour on a bike,
Sure.
which is just as dangerous. So,
Council, could we maybe have some clarification proposed, see what other cities are doing with that? Because I think we do need to carve out some exceptions to make it clear that people can use their electric wheelchair and that, and maybe some of the other items. I'm not familiar with the battery assist for going uphill, but maybe a battery assist at a limited speed. Regina, I know you wanted to maybe hold some of that. Do you have a strong objection to putting something in?
My suggestion would be specifically to, looking at kind of these e-fueled, I guess, types of devices, whether they're these scooters or maybe it's electric bikes. Council gave some direction to staff to look into that further and to propose some changes in respect to that. And it probably falls along the same lines of what we're talking about here. So to allow that to kind of play out, maybe that's the more opportune time, would be my suggestion.
So maybe we just kind of flag it and say, this is something to be dealt with, but hand it off to the proper
Yeah.
methods
Yeah.
to
That
deal
would
with
be
it.
my suggestion, Michelle.
Well, you are
If
part of
have
the
a-
proper method.
Start, we're not finished.
No, I know, but you are part of getting it to the council. It's just-
Right, yeah, so maybe we just flag it and say, this is for review, and
Hang on, Michelle's
Very
first.
similar
Okay.
to her suggestion. And I'm not sure what the timeline is for when we're gonna get back to the council with that information. But, we could, as, the task force could recommend that it be consistent with whatever the council decision is, or whatever, that, that definition of, or exceptions to, are the same throughout the code. When we go to we've got another month before we do a final approval on this, so maybe we can buy some time and see where we're at that point.
Okay. Steve, you had,
I agree. If they're studying it, we should look at that.
I would also say we should look at what Minneapolis is doing in this whole area, because you got people with electric bikes now running in traffic lanes, you know, downtown. And they got bike lanes and traffic lanes, so they've probably struggled with this a lot more than we have, and we could probably learn a lot in terms of what the thinking is around that.
That makes sense.
Seeing what they're redoing Bryant Lane now because they couldn't get the fire trucks through. So we should probably learn as much as we can.
That makes sense.
All right.
Did we have any other comments on 653? Okay,
Other than I don't know what burnout means, but I'm sure it's fine.
sounds fun.
Not limited to racing or burnouts. Does anyone know what it is?
Yeah, it's when you're like holding the brake and you start the accelerator and everything's starting to run and then the tires run on the back, so it's creating that black streak.
It's
Oh.
burning rubber,
Yeah.
Burning rubber.
Oh, burning rubber, I've
burning
heard.
rubber.
Yeah.
We used to
Yes.
call
All
it
right.
something else.
Yeah.
Old people. Okay.
Oh, there's been-
Now,
requiring
don't
new
bring the
tires in a
ADA
month.
into it. Okay, moving on to page 38 then. Reviewing habit-forming narcotic substance. Looks like they took some suggestions, made edits there. Any comments or questions on the edits?
No.
Chair, are we on 38 or 39?
38.
38, okay.
You, Jen. I did have one question. JS 31. Says reasonable and proper seems subjective. I guess my concern with that when I read through is what is considered reasonable and proper and by whom, and I thought that needed some clarification.
Which may come up in the council review.
Yeah, probably will. Yeah.
Okay. I don't see any comments in designation of public areas for use.
Did we address, line E?
E?
E,
With the,
Yeah,
the
Amended.
edit.
suggested change in wording?
Yeah,
looks good.
yeah, I'm sorry, I thought,
yeah, if they don't talk about it, it's good.
So we are changing it, or we are not changing it?
We are.
I'd get rid of the extra space before the period too, just for
Oh, yeah.
grammar edit's sake. And perpendicular, we change, right angles changed to perpendicular, we're okay with that as well? Okay. Okay, we've got on page 39. I don't see who made that comment. Somebody commented that it seemed inconsistent with 7-1-2D.
CF would be
That's the fourth one over here.
Chris? Yeah, I don't have 7-1. Do we need to come back to that, Chris, or?
It sounds like from Erica's edit, it's the same as 7-1-2 to D, but it's just stated
In the opposite.
in,
In the opposite way,
yeah.
in the opposite manner, so,
Do we want to clarify and be
yeah,
consistent with
I can
these
totally
things?
update that. To be consistent
Yeah,
with it, okay.
it seems reasonable.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Jared again. You're gonna like having me here tonight. 655,
6.5.
hours for use. We restrict hours of use for recreational vehicles in the city?
We do.
Who knew?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Be home by 10, Russ.
Yeah.
Is that for bicycles as well?
I suppose that's because of the noise and the potential for noise complaints.
And maybe that is one of those situations where you gotta
Right?
look worth getting a little bit more
Like a
specific.
wheelchair going down the road, coming from a
Right.
grocery store kind of
Right.
thing? Yeah.
You're talking motorized, not
I
regular.
guess I can't think of a bicycle as a
Simple
vehicle.
clarification, that's all I wanted.
No, I think that that's a good point. Is this
Under
something that will
recreational
be
motor vehicle.
reviewed in its entirety, or is this something we should look at now?
So, Chair, members of the task force, I think we're obviously raising a lot of issues with this section, and it is obviously being looked at a staff level. We can try to give you some update at the next meeting, but perhaps ultimately, maybe there's a motion that we take at that next meeting about all of the concerns that the task force has about the various items, including the sweep of vehicles that are used for persons living with disabilities and wheelchairs, et cetera. So we can try to give you what information we can gather for the next meeting, and then, but it may be a situation where we're just expressing our concerns, because it is a much larger issue.
Yeah, I think perhaps once you brought that back to us as a task force, we could look at any concerns that aren't addressed and put them forth to the city council to consider as they go through this. First, okay. Yes, go ahead.
That 655 hours of use, and that is for reduction of noise, is the intent?
That is the intent, it appears.
Yeah. Now, I was thinking the newer electric recreational vehicles may not make the same amount of noise that we are used to in,
Right.
combustion machines, so.
So
Could
when
we
they
say
look,
here that for noisy recreational vehicles? It's just a question.
Yeah.
I know, where do you define this?
yeah, they're gonna look at this whole section
Oh, that
because
too.
of these new
Okay.
vehicle types that they need to address. And so staff is going to make some recommendations, and that, we'll see them next time.
Okay, that's in the, okay.
Even
I
if,
didn't
even
know
if it's not done, we can at least put forth input and suggestions for that rewrite. Anything else?
Including striking it. Because if we're not gonna regulate a Harley Davidson crashing through the neighborhood, I don't know why we would do this.
Yeah,
What's loud?
yeah.
People complaining about certain vehicles going through their yards at all hours of the day and night is probably where that originated.
Driving on someone's property is a
Yep.
different issue.
Yeah,
that's a
doesn't mean,
All right.
all right, we'll move on then. Page 40, you had a question regarding,
Well, I
a type-
understand, it's the helmets according to the specs, but you don't have to wear them when you wear motorcycles in Minnesota. So they're just referencing the specs.
okay. Okay. And the definitions with common meanings were removed. And there was only one property. I don't see any other task force member comments on page 40.
657, is that motorized vehicles or recreational vehicle? So is a bicycle a recreational vehicle because it's not motorized? And would that require a helmet
This is recreational vehicles under the definition.
of motorized?
It says
what-
any
recreational
self-propelled
vehicles.
vehicle too on there.
So
Yep.
that'd be bicycles?
Yep.
No.
No, a bicycle is
No,
not
I
self-propelled.
cannot agree
It's
that a
propelled
bicycle
by
is
a
a
rider.
self-propelled vehicle.
Yeah, this is where it's gotta be clarified.
Well,
So
we should
I-
just be clear here.
Yeah, I think the intention is it to be recreational motor vehicle, which is
Perfect.
at
Just put
the
motor in
definition
and
at the
I'm
beginning
good.
of the statute.
Yep.
Then you can determine whether or not that makes sense, but that's what
Perfect.
it's.
Okay. Any other questions or clarifications on page 40?
Nope.
Yes, Michelle?
Chair, if I may, as we go through, if you wouldn't mind calling out when we get to the new chapters, because we do have Captain Stinger online, I just wanna make sure he can follow along. So like, we're going now to chapter 6-6, disposal of unclaimed property.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that I can make sure that he can follow along. His, version doesn't have the same page numbers as ours.
Oh, certainly. I can do it.
Thank you.
So, we're now in chapter 6-6, disposal of unclaimed property, on page 40. And moving to page 41. Does anybody have any comments or questions on the edits?
I have a question about, under what circumstances would the city impound a motor vehicle?
Captain Stanger available to chime in?
Hello, everyone. Captain Stenger here. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. I wasn't able to attend in person. I didn't have it on my calendar, so sorry to come at you remotely, but hopefully that'll work. I know the question was, when would we, if it was an abandoned vehicle in the middle of the roadway and was unclaimed, we've got to get it off the roadway. That's one instance that comes to mind. It doesn't happen very often, but situations like that are one would be, it's stuck in the roadway and we've got to get it out of the way for traffic reasons.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Any other questions regarding the disposal of motor vehicles?
Minors.
I had made a comment that 6-6-4E and 6641 seems burdensome for a homeless person who may not have, or people who may not have the mental capacity to navigate the requirements without assistance. I had a little concern about that. I was thinking of somebody who happens to have a vehicle and they're living out of their car, for example.
Does the added item under 6641, right of reclaim, meet any of those concerns? Or is it too after the fact?
Well, if they have lost their vehicle and they have no way to get to the facilities, it just seemed a little arbitrary. I don't think that every homeless or incapacitated person necessarily has the capacity to seek help from those agencies, and that's my concern here. Is there anything?
I'm not sure
Go ahead.
their vehicle wouldn't necessarily be pounded either. If they're living out of their vehicle, I assume it's off the road.
Well, you also have a mental health department with the police department as well, so I'm sure that would be involved in those situations. If somebody was suspecting someone living out of a home, that department would be pulled in for those purposes of that. That's unique to Burnsville.
Okay. I'm good with that. Moving on to page 42, section 6641. What was the reason for adding, as stated in Minnesota statutes, and including that in our code here?
This is going back to the issue of homelessness and just making sure that those persons that are experiencing homelessness are protected.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't see, does anybody have any other comments on section 6.4 or 6.6.4.2 or 6.6.5?
You want to announce the next section for?
Yes.
Property, but I know that the state of Minnesota has unclaimed property, like listed on the website and stuff. If it goes to unclaimed, does the city have a place that it's posted or anything? Or does someone, if they lose something, they're just coming to the city and they just inquire? Is that really just more so the process? You know what I mean? Like.
Are
does
you
it, like-
talking generally?
Yeah, just in general, like, if it's, maybe they don't realize it's gone. You know, like, maybe it's a trailer and they just realize after a period of time, and they're gonna come over and maybe say that it's stolen or it's missing, I suppose, and then go that way. But there's nothing like the state of Minnesota has unclaimed property website where they talk about, and it's a lot of other things. There's financial stuff and things like that there too, but there's nothing that's publicly listed anywhere, right? Like, if there's 3 cars impounded, it doesn't get listed on a website or anything.
I guess I'm struggling a little bit with the question, but I think the answer is no.
Okay, I didn't think so, and in reading through all this stuff, I was just like, well, we've talked a lot in my work, we deal with the unclaimed property in the Minnesota side, so I was like, well, is there a secondary database that we need to be like looking for things for people?
I don't know if I can maybe add something. I like to poke around on the city website. I don't know if Captain Stinger, if you're still online, but we do have a police auction section on our city website.
Yeah.
And it does have a website that you can look on for those items.
Oh.
And it references code section 6-6-1 through 6-5-5.
Nice.
Okay, cool.
Learn something new.
Takes care of that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
see,
Learn
there's
something
no
new.
for auction.
It says on the website, it complies with statute 345.15.
Okay.
It's nice.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah.
Have to go shopping after the meeting. No.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't know if I will, but.
Any other comments on up to 6-6-5? All right, section 6-7, minors, appears to be struck, and we will be moving all the way to chapter 6-8, league hold traps. Leg hold. I'm thinking it's short for legal. Why did we abbreviate legal there? Leg hold traps. Totally different frame of mind.
I got one.
Yes.
682. Add this at between, on the second to the last sentence, between owner and the word and. Change it to
Hang on, let me find where you are.
Yeah, he's,
682.
Yep, 682, and
This,
then
the last sentence,
word,
You starting with traps must be identified?
yeah.
okay,
After the word owner,
okay.
to preclude unintended human contact. So I don't want kids down on the river bottom to go into a trap. So it should be identified to prevent human interaction. Or some words about like that.
What does that mean?
So you got a trap down in the river bottoms?
Right, which I find
And there's
just
bird
utterly.
watchers and there's kids, right? I don't want
horrible
a
to think
kid to
about.
walk into a trap and have it snap on their foot. So I want them not to just put their name and identity on the trap, but it should be identified such that a person would not, by accident, step on the trap.
I see, like big red letters, this is a trap.
Or a sign saying
Orange
trap.
sticker, or, you know, like.
I see.
Something a human would recognize.
Yeah.
I didn't understand
Not
that
necessarily
that's what
rodent,
those
but-
words meant.
yeah.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah. Yeah,
Good point. My grandson is down on those river flats with his dad a lot. They find things down there all the time.
I would actually think that it deserves its own separate sentence in that paragraph rather than trying, because they're looking to identify ownership in that sentence.
right.
But I think it deserves a sentence and, that says they're clearly identified so that humans don't mistakenly set them off.
Do we need to define clearly identified in some manner?
Well, we're really looking at making it conspicuous, right? So that it can be
Conspicuous is a
seen.
good word.
And
Yeah.
conspicuous,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay.
Yep.
I think that's a better word.
yes.
Would staff propose
Yeah,
some
and
language there?
conspicuous
Okay.
to preclude blah, blah, blah.
The blah, 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 that's the official language. Okay. Any other concerns on section 6-8?
No.
So we're trapping nuisance animals? Is that which are what? What? Rats?
Trapping fur bearers.
Fur bearers.
I'm reading you can use these for the purpose of trapping nuisance animals.
On the river bottom, I think it's just general trapping, but let's read it.
Oh, yeah. Domestic animals and said traps may be used for general trapping.
Yeah, the river bottoms is general trapping
Yeah.
under 682.
Here's my deal. I read this sentence to mean you can't use steel-jawed leg-hold traps for animals that are not nuisances. Otherwise, you wouldn't say, for the purpose of trapping, nuisance animals.
Other
So
than
if the goal really is to allow any old thing to be trapped, then we should just get rid of the word nuisance.
No, I think the idea is that if it's in like a domestic capacity at a house, it's for nuisance animals. And then if you're down by at the river bottom, you can trap fur-bearing animals, essentially.
And what are nuisance animals?
Squirrels, skunks,
rodents.
gophers.
Anything that comes there.
Ooh, this is just making me ill, just hearing this. You can. Is there any animal that's not a nuisance animal?
Depends on the
Well,
animal.
under this section,
Where's
it's
the
exempting
definition?
domestic animals, so cats, dogs.
Sure.
the like.
Ferrets.
We've got possum in our neighborhood, we have raccoons,
Right,
we have deer who could apparently step in some trap and that'd be fine.
but this is specific to the areas on that, because I know in my park, when we had possum problems, we had to live trap. And then I had to pay a relocation fee. So this is specific areas where the leg traps would be allowed, not in the general.
Yeah, you couldn't do it in
Area.
the city park.
On
It
land.
does,
or
it says you can
individual.
use it in your neighborhood.
On, yeah, where you reside, on your own property.
Right.
Yeah, an individual.
So I could put this in my front yard and trap
deer.
the raccoon.
Or the deer.
Coyote.
Or the stray dog that walks into your front yard.
So
Skunk,
we have
whatever.
some angst about this evidently.
I do, but
Would you
maybe
like
it's-
to,
I would like to forbid
you would like to,
steel-jawed leg traps. The cruelty is more than I can personally think about, but I might be the only one, and so be it.
Just a question, is this used actually by people? I don't know, within the city? I mean, it used to, the trapping used to be a like business or whatever, long time back, but in today's world, is this necessary to have traps?
It's a good question. Does the task force want to make a proposal to the city council to change this policy?
If it's not any longer used, why have it? That's my question. There was a time when people were trapping, that's a different story.
I guess maybe we could ask too if like, if there's something that's happening that where there's maybe still something occurring, or is there complaints happening where there's these steel traps still happening somewhere, like are police getting reports of them? I don't know. Maybe that's the question to ask too, or defining nuisance animals more clearly.
I mean, my neighbor hates the rabbits that are in our yard, but there's not a darn thing you can do about it. Unless you
Shared
sit there with a
task force.
BB gun.
We do
Because
get
it's illegal.
complaints on animals,
Sure we do. I would
complaints on-
like to complain about them, but
on feeding, we have laws and ordinances already in place
To prevent
to prevent some of
feeding?
that,
preventing deer to be fed
deer and waterfowl.
and waterfowl, yes.
So there is some reasoning behind this. I think the real issue is the traps themselves. A lot of that's also regulated by the Minnesota DNR.
But
Which seems different to me than someone who doesn't like the rabbits running around putting a leg trap in their front yard.
You know,
yes,
much of
go
it,
ahead.
a lot of area of Burnsville, including my lot, is, it's not that far away from the the habitat for all kinds of animals, which is the the feral or and some of them come. I've seen foxes and even catching one. That doesn't stop anything.
I can think of one scenario. I mean, my neighbor's dog was attacked by a coyote the other night. That might be a reason somebody'd want to do something.
You trap one coyote and the next one comes because
Yeah.
there's a habitat there. It's not like then you have to eliminate all coyotes within miles.
So, without addressing the morality of it, is there a proposal that the task force would like to make so that we can take this to the city council? Are we,
I guess I would propose just asking maybe legal or something, how does this conflict with Minnesota state statute? Because I see, like, I just looked on the DNR website, and they're looking at nuisance, they define nuisance animal, and they talk about taking it. And as I just scan through this, it doesn't specifically talk about where you can take it, but there are local ordinances they reference quickly. In many urban areas or areas regulated by local ordinance, you may be restricted to live trapping. But they do talk about some other things, so maybe it's something just to check against Minnesota statute first and go, okay, well, what do they do? And then we maybe have a discussion if we want to go further than what the state allows. Cause maybe it's the same thing that they're saying, I guess.
Chair and members of the task force, I think we've updated here to include some of Minnesota rules that derive from the statute, to be consistent with that. So I think as written, it's square, not out of compliance with the statute. The question is, do you all want to include domestic trapping, at your domicile, and do you want to include trapping down at the river bottom? That's the two questions I think that are really before you.
so just to clarify, council, the question on the table is, do we want to be more restrictive than state law and prohibit the use of steel jaw leg traps?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any, Nancy, are you, you're gonna propose that?
Sure, you know,
Okay.
if it's a thing that we would then just vote on, I would move that we,
So you have a motion.
yes, I move, that the council consider removal of use of leg hold traps in, at individual residences, I guess, would be the word.
So, for clarity, the motion on the table is prohibiting the use of steel-jawed leg hold traps where individuals reside, or completely? There are two cases allowed for
Sure,
in
I guess
6.
I do not have quite as much of a, I don't even know what the really Minnesota River Bottoms means, so, but certainly out of residential areas.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second on the motion?
Yeah, nice.
Second by Godin. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have a comment. I don't think it is solving any problem having traps. That's my feeling is that it doesn't solve any problem, so why have animals go through this cruel treatment if it doesn't solve any problem?
Leg hold traps, you mean?
Leg
Yeah.
hold traps, yeah.
Yeah,
Other kinds of traps.
because we are, yeah, we are near a, a protected wildlife area, and things come from there, and that's kind of part of the life here.
Yes,
When you're done.
Steve?
So, I'm not sure it happens, but there's a part of Burnsville with bigger lots, correct?
Yes.
Towards, what's that big park,
Murphy Hanner.
you'd either have it by, yeah, down by Black Dog, or you got it by Terrace Oaks, I suppose. But let's say somebody has a skunk in their yard. And I don't know if I'd wanna live trap it, or just call somebody to come and get it. If you call in a company to deal with it, what do they bring? Would they bring a leg trap or a live trap, or what do they do? Do we know?
It would depend the city they're doing it in.
This will be, if we change this,
Yeah.
then that would affect them, right?
Yeah. If we say no
Yes.
steel traps, then that was there a way then to put that in there, that, if it's called in for a verified company? Because there are a few animals if you have to do, I mean, I wouldn't wanna mess with the beavers in the nature preserve behind my park. I'll tell you that right now. Those suckers can move a railroad tie, full size, so I don't see anybody messing with those bad boys any way, shape, or try to live trap. You're not, no. I wanna hire them, I'll tell you that. But there are a few cases, but it would need to be a licensed, registered company handling that kind of thing.
So perhaps an exception for licensed exterminators.
Correct.
Right now, we have a motion and a second, though,
Yeah.
to
So we need to vote on
permanently
the first one.
remove the whole thing, so just
Okay,
so everyone's aware.
so. Do we
Would
do
you
some?
like to make a friendly amendment to that motion to have an exception? You can ask the maker and the second if they agree to that. An exception to allow licensed terminators?
Yeah.
Or
Nancy,
certified
okay.
terminators or whatever?
And Godin, you also would allow that exception? Okay, so the restated motion is to prohibit the use of steel-jawed leg hold traps in residential areas with the exception of professional exterminators. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Keep your hands up.
Any opposed?
All opposed? Say nay. Okay,
Motion carries.
motion carries. Thank you. New at this.
No, you're doing a fine job.
All right. So that will take us to chapter 6-9, drug paraphernalia.
This will be
that changing
interesting.
From the steel traps to.
Wait a week.
Just wait till Friday.
Yeah,
What's happening Friday? I'm on it.
Senate will be voting on the.
On the marijuana.
Yeah,
so they'll be back for this one.
I know as you're reading it going, okay.
all right. So 6-9, yes, Nancy?
Well, this whole thing could change drastically,
Yes.
Yes.
so.
All right, so 6-9-2 was struck in its entirety, and I do not see any comments. 6-9-3, there are some minor edits referring to chapter instead of act. Any questions or comments on that?
Is this to get rid of head chops? I mean, is that what we're?
Yeah, this is previously,
Which
section?
This is current ordinance.
Yeah, so it's not about personal, ownership. All right.
Just a question. This drug, is it governed by state at all? Is this drug paraphernalia?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Is it governed by state laws about drugs?
Well, there's certainly state laws on drug use, and this is referencing them, chapter 152, for example. So this is kind of a general ordinance, but there's certainly state laws that do apply.
State laws apply, then should we even say anything, here, because drugs are controlled by your legislature or whatever legal is by state. What does the city has to do with it?
Michelle, do we still have Captain Stanger on?
Sorry, what was the question?
Question is, the drug paraphernalia section, if that's all done by, there's state legislation or legal circumstances that governs it, should we include anything in the city ordinance? Or any
Delete it in its
particular?
entirety. You're saying delete it in its entirety.
Well, I don't know what is in the state, so if there's something additional that the city wants, that's fine, but I like to know why we have it here if there's a state law.
Chair, members of the task force, that's a good question. I'd have to look at the state statutes and see if they are the same or similar, and I don't know, Jared, if you've had the ability to look at that. It would be something we could certainly look at, because yes, we have gotten rid of some of these that mirror state statutes, so I would have to look and see. But I also agree, and Jared can maybe comment on this, with the impending potential state law changes coming. I don't know how much work we would want to put into this right now, knowing this is probably going to all change anyway.
Yeah.
So let's move along.
Move on, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can look into it, and obviously next month, things may be quite different.
Yes.
Although I don't know, as I'm looking here, maybe some of the stuff doesn't change anything, because there's a referencing state statute and what is allowed under state statute or not. So we may not have any substantive changes after all, but we can certainly revisit whether or not we need this section, or whether it's superfluous, given what's available to the PD and the prosecutors.
Okay.
Because you'll be allowed to grow it yourself, for instance. Cultivate, grow.
Yep, correct. But that is a reference to
It's like back in the past.
whatever is in violation of chapter 150, statute chapter 152. So if it's not a violation of chapter 152, it may not need an edit. But we'll,
Yeah, we'll see how it's all written.
yeah.
Okay, so for clarity, we're skipping the rest of 6.9 and pending state law. Okay. just wanted to make sure. And 610 has been struck, which,
Quick.
yes,
I happen, of course, to have a personal interest in outside storage within residential neighborhoods. Why was it struck, or was there really nothing there? It was just a placeholder?
Yeah.
There was nothing?
Chair,
Michelle?
Member Nystuen, it looks like this had already been struck at this point, and what I'm guessing is that this is now in the zoning code.
Okay.
And not, because it wouldn't, I'm assuming that it no longer falls under police regulation, which is the title we're working on
Okay.
now. It now falls under zoning code and what's allowed, and outdoor storage is limited depending on where you're at and those kinds of things, like you can't store, a bunch of pallets in your front yard.
This is like a railroad car full of basement furniture that was flooded, that's been there almost 2 years. So
Give me the
I'll look
address.
into whether it's,
That would be a him thing.
okay,
All right?
thank you.
thank you. Any other feedback before we move on to 611, alarm systems?
Look this up.
Okay. Looks like just had some edits removing definitions with common meetings. Any comments on that section? Okay. All right, moving on to page 49. Per Don, the correct name is Dakota 911. Thank you, Don. Any concerns on section 611.3 or 611.4 as edited? All right. Moving on to page 50, section 611. Nancy had asked if 611.6 is still needed. I don't see any.
Chair, yeah, I'm not sure what this does for us.
It says it came from 1996, so it just struck me that maybe it's not needed.
It should be deleted just to be consistent with the other sections of the code.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Good catch.
Okay. And then also the word appurtenant, is there a better word we could use?
$5 for whoever can define that.
Now I have to look it up again, because it made me go to my dictionary, and I'm like, okay, now can you give me the definition of this one to go to that one, to go to this one, to, what the Hanaberry?
It's essentially like related to our belonging to, adjacent and belonging to, here in this case, covered premises.
So adjacent
Yeah,
or belonging to could substitute?
yeah.
Let's do that.
If you don't like that legalese,
That's a big word.
it's change.
Is there any reason to keep the legalese?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at
Part
all.
of it was to get rid of some of the
Yeah,
legalese
that
of
was
the
the
ordinance.
That's why we're here.
Now, if I understand correctly, this is on trespass notices being issued, correct?
Yes.
Police are the only ones who can issue them now. We can no longer issue them. The police department's the only one who can issue trespass notices. That has changed. It's been that way for over a year or 2 years. I cannot issue a trespass notice in my property. The police department has to do it, and they have to do it when that person's on property. And I verified that with my housing officer.
We're still in the definitions here. I'm a little confused on,
Yeah, the no trespass notice, is that what?
yeah,
it is?
where,
Yeah.
where is,
Page 51.
For
yeah,
this
you're a page
section-
ahead of us. Sorry. Okay.
Well, to allow an owner or agent covered premises to which the public has implicit right to exclude a person, but I can't, you're talking about a trespass notice with that there, but I can't issue one. You cannot issue one now. That changed with Dakota County and the upper levels. So that change is something like I said, when I saw this coming through, I verified with the PD.
Is that came from the county, you said?
Yep, so we can't do, the citizens can't do that. If you have a store or property like my park, if somebody was doing something in my park that didn't live there, you need to leave because you did something not good, I cannot do that now. And city code can't give me permission to do it. And it's not enforceable unless the police do it, and it's not enforceable unless they do it on your property.
Chair Captain Stanger.
Yes.
Task Force Member Jensen, thank you for bringing that up. I think you're correct. I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing. You're correct, as I understand it. We have to issue the trespass, but we don't do it. It comes from you, the property manager, saying, I want this person trespassed, and then we issue it. But you're the one saying, or the store owner, or whoever it is saying, I don't want that person on my property for whatever reason. Then we come out and we issue the trespass notice, and yes, as I understand, we have to do it while they're on property. I think that's correct.
Because I used to be able to do the form and sign it and send it out. Now I can't.
Chair,
Yes.
members of the task force, I think that, what Member Jensen is ultimately mentioning is that there are several provisions in this section that are written as such that it assumes that you are physically writing out as a property manager, the trespass notice. So in light of what Captain Stanger was saying, we can just make a note and come back with edits to fix all that throughout the provision without having to kind of piecemeal each one. We could just
Yeah.
come back to make
So
sure
it's
that's
understood
reflective of,
that
yeah.
this is the police issue. Perfect, thank you.
Just one question, general information. Okay, somebody trespasses, let's say that the owner can issue a trespass notice, but what does that do? Somebody, if you don't want that, and it's a trespass, and you you can probably call police, and they can probably do something. But what is net effect of writing something or whatever the trespass notice? I'm just wondering.
So what I've used it in the past is to let you know, don't come back on my property. You don't belong anywhere on my property. You come back on my property, it's a misdemeanor offense.
So it's just to a particular
For
person?
1 year. It's to a particular person, yes.
For a particular duration?
For 1 year. It's a 1 year
Okay.
duration,
Okay,
yes.
okay,
Yeah. I've actually had one go all the way. They came back so many times and went to a felony level.
So the point is legal enforcement if they re-trespass.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions on this page?
Nope. That's right action.
Okay. Moving on to section 612.5, page 52. Nothing there. We have some comments from Member Jensen. Is service of a trespass notice by certified mail, even if not accepted, still proof of service?
I thought it had to be issued when the person was on the
Right,
property.
so that,
Yeah.
So that would
That
be
would
something that
change.
would go away.
Okay. And 6-12-8 was removed to be consistent with other sections of code. Which brings us to page 53, section 613.
Oh, the title needs to change,
Title's wrong.
since it was updated to Dakota 911.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is just referencing 911 services in general.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. Any comments or discussion? I see Member Nystuen. You have a comment on section 3.2 definitions? That we don't have?
It's just a grammatical, the way you do things is the first time
Yeah.
some letters show up, you have to use the words first.
Question, so on the 911 system, if you don't have a phone, a home phone anymore, you just have a cell phone, does 911 still work locating where you are?
Goes to the nearest cell tower, because in my park, I'm right across from Scott County, it pings Scott County
Yeah, so it really
from a
doesn't.
cell phone. Landline it does, but from a
Correct.
cell phone, they're not there yet. They're working on it, but they're not 100% there yet.
Members of the task force, it's a good question. Yes, it's the cell phone tower, but they're actually able to narrow it down a little closer than that, but the range can be from, you can get 5 meters out to 3,000 meters. There'll be a radius from where that call is, so, but it's varies tremendously depending on the call and where the different cell phone towers are at.
Thank you.
We don't need to put anything in here that discusses the fact that if you don't have a landline, the location is just approximate. I don't know if that's important or not.
It's like I tell all my residents when they move in, if you call 911, be aware you're gonna hear Scott County, please ask for Burnsville. That's an automatic now, when I go through that. I automatically tell them that, and I tell them anywhere you are in the Twin Cities calling off a cell phone, you need to let them know where you are to be more accurate, because you're gonna ping off of different towers.
Okay.
I'm guessing this is more aimed towards businesses and things too.
Yeah,
Like
that's what it
where I-
seems.
Yeah, where I work, they have a software, like we have soft phones, so it's all through the computer system, and we have a program that like comes up every month or so, and you have to reconfirm where your location is, that it registers with the phone, because you could work remote or you could work in the office, and then you have to re-register it. So there's stuff like that, and I'm sure that that's the reasoning here, is a lot of businesses may be bouncing and they have to have it registered properly.
Okay. Moving on to page 54, which is the last page in our packet. 613.3 notice requirements.
My
Memorize.
We already
question
went
was, you know, I'm not familiar with this, but I'm not a business who has these multi-line services. Just wondering if they all know about these requirements, or if this is special to the city that we need to somehow reach out to them to do it?
That's a good question.
Or if just everybody knows?
Chair,
Yes,
I don't know
please.
the answer to that question,
don't
is it
either.
maybe
Okay.
staff or Captain Sanger can respond?
I don't know the answer to that either. I would guess, I mean, it would be under the building codes or someone coming in and building this building, whether it's, you know, through our code enforcement or whoever it would be, this would be one of the requirements, that they have the ability to track your 911 calls, but that's all I would know.
Could we verify that, perhaps?
Just that there's this, item C is very specific.
Because I know like in property management field, your staff more or less has cell phones. Not necessarily a landline or access to that system. So they're, that's.
Yeah, when I used to work for the state, we were told generally, no one's gonna know where you are, you have to tell them, but state government knows what the rules are.
My question is, having something like this in this code, saying that you have to be on that, does that, you know, people don't,
Right, no one's
the people
reading
who need probably don't even read it. It's not like a violation, and you cannot say it's a violation of the city code, and, you know, so I know the importance of having tracing, but is this the place that does that job to make our police chief's life easier? Having put it here,
Council?
Chair, members of the task force, we can circle back with staff and try to figure out, to get some more information on this, whether we still need it, how it's implemented, and whether or not it's just something we can scratch.
Thank you.
this is the first time I'm reading that there's a legal requirement in Burnsville to be on the line. I mean, I will do that automatically, but not necessarily to comply with the city code.
Well, for multi-line.
Well, I know.
You know, special,
yeah, I've been
for
in-
businesses that have.
Yeah, I've been in multi-line,
Yeah, yeah.
too. But if it's an emergency, that's part of the procedure or whatever duty is to let people know where you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been familiar with it with my business, like where I work here in Burnsville, and
Okay.
it seems like the city, like when they come in to add more lines, they're aware of that, but I don't know if they know all of it, or if they just know, some things that are going on and they have to be aware. I think that there's some sort of thing that changed, especially since 2001, if that's the last time this was updated,
Right.
but, technology has changed so much that, it's been probably 5 years that I've seen that on my systems about, like, saying where your location is and stuff like that, so.
I can answer my landline sitting in India, which I have done.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Exactly.
Quote
So,
unquote, that
yeah,
landline.
I'm gonna move us along, if you don't mind, because
Sure, no.
we have another.
Yeah.
Okay. The final version of this title will come before us for approval at the next meeting. And currently, staff is handing out the rest of the packet for this evening. Item 4 of the agenda is questions and comments from the task force and public for Title VII, Health and Sanitation. The submitted comments are included in tonight's packet, which you'll have in front of you very shortly.
Chair, I would like to mention also that we had some members of the public that had submitted comments that got into the packet a little late. So if you didn't see them, we did print them out, and we're handing those out with the.
Oh, it's coming with this? Okay.
If you looked at the packet before Monday morning, Megan got back and realized we missed those.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. All right.
These citizen concerns, they're dated August of 2021?
That, we have had, we collect comments at all times. And if
okay.
somebody submits a comment on a title that we don't see for a year, then you may not, it may just sit there and wait
Okay.
until that time as we actually get around to it, to that title.
Okay. Yes.
Chair, members of the task force, just for some guidance, the public comments that you've been provided are all for Title VII, which we're gonna be starting and working to, and then I think
So maybe,
you provided the response.
Right.
The city
Your memo.
attorney memo, which was related
Yes,
to
and that's,
Title VII
that's
as
it.
well.
That's it. That's
Big
right.
packet.
okay, so we should just,
First page.
so, do city attorneys or staff have anything to add before we move into this packet then?
I actually, Jared may not have been aware that the council recently discussed the no-mow May issue. And concluded that they would not have a city program for no-mow May, that we would allow people to do it if they so chose, but more about encouraging pollinator habitat, those types of things instead of no mow May completely. As Councilmember Gustafson said in the meeting, sometimes it's hard to make it the whole month of May without mowing. So We don't want to prohibit anyone from mowing who feels like they should, but also, the count, and in your memo, I added the council's discussion and direction from that meeting.
Perfect.
I did have one other question, number 14, and I'm trying to remember, Shelley, I think that was, yes. Where do these amounts come from? I could not find a section 7-2-21-2-E.
I'll have to find that again. It's been a while since I looked
Maybe
at
as we
this.
go across it, it will come up.
Okay. It probably changed over the course of time.
Right, it could have, yeah.
Okay. So, we'll move on. Item 5 is actually the review of Title VII, Health and Sanitation. And we have suggested staff edits in front of us. Just a clarifying question. Do I need to go through all of the preview work with the,
Unless somebody, for the
Any
question, no.
No, okay.
Those comments have been incorporated.
perfect. All right, thank you. All right, so we will move to page 63 of the packet. Chapter 7-1, Health Nuisances. Does anybody have any comments or questions on page 63? Okay. Page 64. Still in the definitions, we had basically the definitions just moved. Does anybody have any concerns with that? Okay. That brings us to page 65. We have more definitions that were all just moved. Okay, anything on page 66? We have a couple of comments. We had an added section. Um, Seven -1 was added.
And Jared, it looks like this was just a rewrite of where you changed the definition, you took it out of the definitions and put it in more generally
That-
into the,
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
It, instead of a definition, it's really a general,
Okay.
general prohibition, this is kind of the common statement that you see in most city codes. So you might have something that fits under this catch-all, but also you might have something that falls into the later enumerations as well.
On page 66, under 712, they talk about manure, rubbish, garbage, tin cans, bottles, junk, debris. How about just like piles of brush? You know,
That's included elsewhere.
is that prohibited, or you can have piles of brush in your
No,
yard?
they need to be taken care of.
They do?
Yeah, usually there's a couple provisions, of rodent harborage language usually gets at piles of brush.
Perfect.
And
All right,
where is
thanks.
that in our code? Do we know?
Somewhere down here, and I
We'll
think
get
it's
to
in
that.
this laundry list, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So moving on to page 67. We included smoke from an outdoor wood boiler in item F. And
What would you use a wood boiler for, like making maple syrup or something? I don't know.
No, it's a heating system.
It's a heating system, yeah.
Oh,
We have some
Okay.
houses in Burnsville that heat by wood.
all right.
And there's, in item I, it says the exception is for engineered to keep vibrations as minimal as possible. Blasting or mining purposes are exempt.
Yeah, actually, I did get a reply back from the or the Public Works Director with a little clarifying language on that. I'll have that for you at the next month's review.
Okay.
But it just happened since the packet went out.
Makes sense. All right, and in item K, we're just saying any inhabitants of the city, not a specific volume.
I think letter E kind of talks about the rubbish, kind of like the pile. It talks about decaying matter being left there.
Sarah?
Sorry, Steve was asking earlier about the pile of like leaves or that kind of thing and brush, yeah, thank you. Page 67, letter E, kind of talks about the depositing of decaying matter, kind of to skip through the sentence on any kind of private or public property except as expressly authorized. So I'm guessing that's kind of,
One area you could put it under.
yeah.
I'm sure it's in later, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when we get to that section, I'll be more interested. Kind of maybe the why is, if you ever had a tree trimmed lately, the cost is just quite a bit more than it was a couple of years ago. And so now people aren't having the material removed, they're just having it cut. And so, you know, they're making their own firewood, but then you end up with these piles of brush. And
And
so,
the heavy snow.
long-term, is that really acceptable or not? I'll be more interested when we get to that section.
Okay.
Okay. Page 68. We've got several edits here. No comments by task force members and any other questions? Okay. Page 69, starting with section 7-1-5. This whole section has been rewritten.
So why is 715 before 714?
Because it needs to be renumbered.
I'm like, wait a minute. You just threw it in there for that, just to see if we're paying attention.
right.
Okay, I got
Pass
it.
the
It
test.
looks like it
You
was
looked
back there,
ahead.
got moved. Good job.
Excellent.
It was in a different order, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so it's just a typo thing that's gotta be
Yes.
corrected.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things that you could just read it wrong,
Yeah.
very easily.
Yes. All right, any other discussion on page 69? 7-1-4, which will be renumbered.
Wow. Was this recently rewritten or being
Yeah,
in
yeah.
blue?
So it was recently rewritten. The goal, and I think we've talked about this before, but the goal of code enforcement generally is just to figure out a way to get the property into compliance with city code. So this section is written a way to just make it clear that the number of tools in the toolbox for city staff and to allow them different opportunities to try to figure out a way to enforce city code. ultimately with the ability to go into court if they need to,
Right.
or order an abatement. So, yeah, it just provides flexibility, but ultimately the goal is how can we most efficiently get the job done and get compliance.
Which of course would be voluntary compliance.
Right.
Yes, I am aware that the city has been involved recently with involuntary compliance. Just wondered if this was recently rewritten and we can presume it's a good rewrite.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. And then we'll move on to page 71 then. We have a lot of struck code, was moved above. Nothing really to review there other, that's staying.
I
Is there?
have a question. It's the top of page 72 in item 1. Does this, the keep or store, in theory, they can't keep it in their garage?
No, if you look at the definition of store, where was that? Back in, there's park is to temporarily locate,
Oh, yeah, page
Okay.
65.
there it is. Locate a trailer or camping vehicle on a lot for longer than 14 days.
Yeah, the question I'm asking is about, it's unlawful to park, keep, place, or store, permit the parking or storage of an inoperable vehicle? I'm wondering if that assumes that that is outside of their garage?
We're not gonna go into a garage without a warrant, I'll tell you that right now.
All right.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah, it's exterior, did you?
Exterior.
Yeah, we could make a clarification
Okay.
to make sure that it's clear that it's exterior.
Exterior storage.
Okay.
Okay.
So we just don't want cars that don't run sitting in driveways. Is that
Up on
basically it?
blocks.
Great.
That's basically it.
Okay.
But if somebody's working on an old car in their garage that doesn't work, there's no issue. It's more so that you wouldn't have several, like you said, on cars on blocks, all over the driveway or something like that.
We've had many instances of inoperable, dismantled,
Don't even go there.
being tore apart cars in various driveways around the city.
Oftentimes they're both inoperable and unsightly,
Exactly.
hand in hand.
And
Is there an amount of time they can have a car in that condition on their driveway, or is it
14
Never.
days.
14 days?
Pretty much.
Okay, fair.
I mean, if somebody's making progress on it, they have a legitimate reason.
Yeah.
We're flexible enough to work with it. But if it hasn't moved and they'll never get it going, that's a whole nother issue,
Or if
Okay.
they're running a repair shop out of their driveway?
which has happened too.
No,
Is that okay or not?
No,
it's not okay.
Okay.
It's a business.
it's
Unlike
addressed later on as well about that, out on city streets or in the driveway itself.
I have a neighbor who has a really cool old pickup that is obviously inoperable, but he moves it in and out of his garage as he works on it and stuff, so.
Yeah.
It's, some might say it's unsightly, some might think it's cool,
Yeah,
depending on.
eye of the
on your-
beholder.
Unsightly is
Yeah.
subjective.
Interesting. Okay, then we've got the abandonment there, and it looks like the rest of that section was struck, 717, all the way to 718.
Do we need to remove 718 in its entirety?
It looks like it. I don't see anything that was left in there. Those were all
Yes.
moved to definitions.
well, there's 718,
No, there is,
the wood storage.
yeah, on the bottom of page 73.
And then it goes on
okay.
from there.
That's not a new section, you're right.
Okay, you're right, 781.
This has a lot of space in between.
Yes.
So wood storage, any concerns about that? I don't see any comments until we get to page 74. 7182.
I
Recommend.
assume this is your brush issue?
Yeah, this could be the.
Is it,
Oh, this is still the
Wood
trailers and
piles.
camping.
Wood.
wood piles like, cut, or, they split wood for burning purposes, or are you talking about like 2x4s for construction? Or both?
I would call this probably wood piles.
Let's see, no higher than 5 feet, 10 feet wide by 25 feet long. Now, that's a pretty that's a pretty good amount of wood.
If you're operating off a boiler though, that you
Yeah,
need that.
both. The definition has firewood and lumber, whether rough, pre-cut, construction grade, or finished.
Yeah, my neighbor,
For
he
definition.
had a tree cut, and he didn't have it removed, he split it all, and it's in his backyard, it's just a big, nicely stacked pile, but he'll burn it over years. It's oak, you know, it's
It's
beautiful
got to
wood.
dry, yeah,
Burns nice.
does,
But I don't mind that so much, but the brush is a different issue.
yeah. All right, moving on to 7.1.8.2.
This is so complicated.
Is this the trailers? and
Yeah,
campers?
trailers and camping vehicles.
What if- just-
4 and 5 will need to be renumbered with striking 3. Yes.
So what is
Steve?
what is the requirement for trailers and campers stored in your driveway?
You have to move them every 14 days.
Do you really enforce that?
It's impossible.
That's one of my comments, it's really, really difficult to enforce. We don't chalk tires. We don't chalk tires, and all somebody has to say is, hey, I moved it.
Right.
We have nothing that's enforceable with that.
So
Move
why
it
do we
from one
have?
side to the other, and that's good.
Well, some people do, believe it or not, they do go out there and move it every 14
I will
days.
tell you, I was here when that happened. It was a compromise. There were some council members that wanted to eliminate all trailer parking in the city. You couldn't have it. If you owned a trailer, they wanted you to do its storage
Store.
lot outside of the city of Burnsville. They didn't want anything, and it was like, no, we had like 18,000 trailers in this city. And so the compromise was that they have to move it every 14 days.
Unless it's in a storage
Yes.
on the side or
On the
back of their
side,
house.
yeah, on the side.
But when it's in their driveway,
That's
they have to
parking.
move it, that's
Yeah,
parking.
that's
yeah.
parking.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a clarification.
Yeah,
If it's off to the side on a surface, then
they're
it's,
good.
as long as it's licensed and.
And
all that stuff.
I have a lot in my neighborhood, and quite honestly, they come out certain times a year, you see them come and go, and then come winter, they're gone.
Does this
Stored.
include motor homes?
Yeah, that's a real difficult one for us to resolve,
Why?
Yeah.
because we don't have a set date. When's the 14 days start? We can't tell if they moved the vehicles or not. We can't trespass on the property.
Get it hooked up, went off and loaded up with something, come
Take a
back and parked it
picture.
again.
So, is the primary vehicle for assuming there's a potential violation neighbors complaining?
Probably.
Yeah.
So, which kind of goes to my question on item 4, right? I was thinking actually of a real-life example of somebody who lives in Burnsville and has a sister-in-law who comes to town and is allergic to cats and stays in the trailer because the person has a cat in the home. And they actually live out of this trailer and they visit several times a year, but they can't stay more than 7 days and stay in their trailer per city code.
Yeah, we have many instances where that's occurred, and it's another one of these, how do you enforce it? You don't know when they're there, you don't know if they're coming or going, you're not gonna search it.
I think it's mainly just intended to give people guidance in terms of you should probably store your camper off-site somewhere.
What's gonna trigger this a lot of times is when we get the complaint about the generator noise, perhaps, if they have a generator,
Especially
That would
in
be
winter.
or recreational fire next to it or some other thing going on.
That sounds like my neighborhood.
Or trying to use it. as a
We'll check
more
addresses
permanent
later.
Where it's just huge and
The same thing with tents set up in people's backyards, sheds sometimes, we've had that happen. It's very hard to prove unless we get a police report for some sort of activity.
And
I
so-
once had a garage used for living and I didn't catch it until they forgot, they didn't see me. Yeah, I saw the curtain in the garage and I'm like, yeah, you're not parking in there, what the Hannaberry's going on? And they're letting somebody live out of their garage. And this was an apartment community, so it does, that kind of, the extremes happen and that's where you get this stuff. But it's very, very difficult to, I mean, I have a little bit easier time because I can take the picture and I can pretty well see when that vehicle has or has not moved versus they can't go in and do what we do. Yeah, we do chalk on occasion, just so we know that we're not missing that it did move.
so really you want people to park in their side yard, that makes it better somehow than parking on your driveway?
Park or store.
Park or store.
Right, it just seems unrealistic, for someone in the summer to park off. It just, doesn't seem realistic. So, I don't know that it's any worse to have it in their driveway right in front of their house than on the side of their house with some yucky looking screening material.
Michelle?
Thank you, Chair, Member Nystuen. I remember the council discussion regarding this, and that was why this compromise was made, because the council said, we have residents who want to park their camper in their driveway so that they can load and unload it for a week before, a week after they take it on a trip, and that's why the provision was allowed for the 14 days.
But you can have it on your side yard
For storage, yes.
Yeah, for storage.
with,
Parking and storage, yes,
as long as you want,
yes.
all winter.
As long as it's not in your front yard. And I think that was specifically to prevent people from permanent living in someone's driveway in a camper. Again, like you said, this was kind of a compromised situation. How can we allow people to get full use of their camper, without harassment, in a normal use of the camper, but yet not abused to the point where your neighbor's constantly looking at campers in the yard that have people living in them.
There's also restrictions on meeting side yard setbacks from neighboring property and length.
So if your
see
lot
a lot
is
of
not
boats stored on
appropriately
the
sized,
side.
it might not be possible to have a
Lot of
camper.
They'll put
yeah.
rock down and then store their boat there.
Right,
They're
I-
all on
it's
trailers.
extremely homely, and I would just as soon have it in the driveway, but that's, I'm not on the council making those decisions, so.
It was a good compromise because they were trying to ban them completely.
Yeah, that I couldn't, that would be hard to deal with.
Yeah,
Did I miss, where does it say that you can store on the side,
we haven't,
It's coming up.
it's coming up, we haven't gotten there
Oh,
yet.
it's coming up? Okay,
Yep.
later, okay, sorry.
I'll have to leave in a couple minutes.
So,
Don't worry about me.
okay. So moving on to page 75, struck the routine maintenance period of 60 minutes per month. And we changed the zoning to single-family residential.
Actually, Chair, I think that what we did was we just spelled out the different zonings that were already in
R1.
there.
Okay.
Because they were kind of listed like R1A, and we spelled out one family rural residential for that.
Okay, perfect. Any other comments on that page before we move on to page 76?
Just let me read it, sorry.
You didn't review this one?
I did, but it's really complex language. Stored outside of that lot.
You're not kidding.
Or trailers or camping vehicles may be parked or stored outside. Stored, okay, that's not, Can you just explain what B means?
Setting guidance.
No, I mean, well, 2 trailers and camping vehicles may be parked
No
or
more than
stored.
2.
Yeah, no more than 2. On your driveway, right? But not more than 14 days?
Parked or stored.
Parked or stored. So you could have one parked, one stored, and that third one wouldn't matter where you put it. It'd be in violation.
Okay. Is that the intent of what we're trying to do here? On the established driveway.
I think what we're talking about is really in B2.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Meaning you can't have a 30-foot driveway and a 40-foot trailer.
It's happened.
I believe it. Yep.
Okay.
Um,
I agree with what's in there.
Okay. We are getting close to time here. We want to try and get through page 76 and
It could be a good, Chair, it could be a good spot to stop, just because 719 is all weeds and grass, and it's gonna go for a couple pages.
yeah, okay. So, I think maybe we'll stop here for tonight. And staff can note that we'll start with riparian lots next time.
Oh, can we finish that one? Because that's part of this chapter, and then the next chapter,
Oh,
719, or section.
719, okay,
Right.
sorry. We need to
Yep.
read the top part for riparian lots before we close. Okay.
Riparian is what?
Lake.
Lake.
Adjacent to
Lake
water.
Setting
Yeah.
to water body.
Okay. So for, if you live on Crystal Lake, you could pull your dock on shore.
All right,
Pretty much.
all right, so, the final version won't be here next time. We will pick up with this next time, rather than the final version. And that brings us to item 6, miscellaneous items. The next code review task force meeting will be May 31st at 5:30 PM here in the council chambers. Meetings will typically be held on the last Wednesday night of each month. Our homework is to continue the review of Title VII, Health and Sanitation. Any new comments are due by May 17th. All right. Members of the task force, there are no additional items
Can I
before.
add one
Oh,
thing?
yes, you may. Sorry.
Just so everyone here is aware that we have a call out for volunteers for this commission. And I think we're trying to get 5 right now.
Okay.
So if you know anybody that's interested, that wants to be part of it, we
Okay.
could use the help.
burnsvillemn.gov/commissions.
There you go.
Thank
We
you.
published it in the community paper.
Yes.
You still haven't gotten any, huh?
Well, that just came out in the last week, so
All right.
we're hoping that it will spur more interest.
Send me an email, if you don't mind, with that information, because there were a couple property managers that came to the last city council meeting that expressed interest. So-
Yes, I tried to recruit them.
I've got a
All
good,
right. All right, any other items? Okay. Members of the task force, there are no additional items before us, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for being with us.
We are.
Thank you, John.